3 times here. And now we need you to vote again in record numbers, to make your voices heard again and again, to change Georgia, to change America again. And this is not an exaggeration. Georgia, the whole nation is looking to you to lead us forward for real.
That President-elect Biden late this afternoon campaigning in Georgia as we are now just over 12 hours away from the polls opening in that key Senate runoff elections. The outcomes, they're going to determine which party controls the U.S. Senate, so no big deal, right? Last night, a fired-up Kamala Harris also visited the state.
The individuals who are elected to the United States Senate each and collectively make decisions about whether we're going to have a federal minimum wage that's at least $15 an hour. They will make decisions about whether we will have health care and an expansion of Medicaid in the state of Georgia. They will make decisions about whether we give people a $2,000 check when they have been out of work for months.
If anything, Harris underselling the importance of Georgia. Name any policy Biden campaigned on or that Democrats want, from the economy to COVID to racial justice, immigration, and on. Georgia is the key. It's important for Republicans also. So tonight, both President Trump, he's going to hold a rally supposedly to help the GOP candidates, but he, of course, is going to also speak about himself and his crusade to overturn the election he lost by a wide margin. Focus on Georgia. In a minute, I'm going to bring in our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman. We will take a closer look at the stakes and also the latest numbers. But first, our field producer, Annie Anderson, spent the last several weeks following the candidates in Georgia and also speaking with the voters. She was at both the Biden and Harris events.
For Get Out the Vote weekend, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris came here to Chatham County. Now, Chatham County is a heavily Democratic area, but it's also an area where turnout is down so far. But people I spoke to say they just haven't made it to the polls yet. Next to a fence to hear from Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, excitement over the election was high in Garden City.
I am feeling wonderful. I am feeling wonderful because I believe in these two people. I feel like they're going to help everyone across the board. I feel like it's not about the rich, but it's about all of us as a whole, the way it should be.
But despite that, some of the people there haven't yet voted in the runoff election.
I'm a last-minute voter. If you vote early, you can't go to the end and see what everything's going on and how people are voting. Everybody do early voting. I mean, it's exciting at the end. Because at the beginning, everybody think, okay, well, they done voted. Who won? The tail end, I'm going to make the victory.
LaShawn Hayward said she plans to head out Tuesday.
See, we wanted everybody to think that we ain't doing nothing. We're going to come out and turn blue one more time to show the world that we are number one.
Democrats are hopeful she's right. Miriam Williams is one of the people who has already voted, but she understands why others might have shied away from early voting.
We have a lot of the elderly people. They did a lot of the absentee, which was great. And you have some people who work, and with this pandemic, they prefer to do the absentee, which was great.
Chatham County has about 220,000 registered voters, but only about 70,000 ballots have been turned in so far. Compare that with Atlanta's suburb DeKalb County, also blue, but where almost half of the registered voters have already voted. And the campaigns are trying to get Savannahans out to vote. In recent weeks, the Warnock campaign released this ad playing up his Savannah roots.
He grew up in Savannah. He knows our needs here.
Pamela Scarber has already voted for the Democratic ticket, hoping a Savannian will represent Georgia in the Senate.
It will make us feel very proud, especially coming from Savannah, Chatham County. And like he said in his campaign and his ad, he want to get in the Senate to represent the people besides a rich person. He want to be just like us, and that's why we supporting him to the fullest.
It's not just the Democrats working to get out the vote. The Republicans are also doing that. Senator Ted Cruz was here in Georgia over the weekend. And this evening, President Donald Trump will be speaking in North Georgia. In Chatham County, Annie Anderson for RNN.
All right, Annie, thank you. In fact, President Trump is en route. We just saw Air Force One take off for Georgia. He'll be speaking there tonight. So where are the early voting numbers from Georgia, and what might they tell us about the vote tomorrow? For that and more, let's bring in Andrew.
Well, Rich, $500 million spent in radio and TV ads in these two races. But compared to the run-up to the November election, far fewer polls have been done in Georgia this go-round. The latest ones show the two Democrats with thin margin of error size leads. But given how close the races are, nobody seems to be relying on polling or even early voting data as much of an indication of anything. But let's see what the numbers show. Those 3 million early votes surpassing any runoff in Georgia history. But there were around 1 million more early voters in November, with 5 million people in total who participated. So that's 2 million people who might show up to the polls tomorrow. Georgia doesn't report the party affiliation of early voters, but we know that more than half of them also voted in the June primaries, and of that group, more than half took part in the Democratic primaries. 4 in 10 took part in the Republican primaries. Not a surprise, Democratic advantage in early voting, but 44% of runoff voters didn't participate in the primaries, so we don't know what their party affiliations are. We do know where the early vote is coming from. The darker the county, the more early votes there. Biggest turnouts are in urban counties, likely to help Democrats in and around Atlanta, Augusta, Columbus, and Savannah, with smaller numbers around Macon and Albany. Now, draw a line, that big blue blob that's in Atlanta, to the northwest corner of the state, the top left counties. There's some light coloring, but none are colored in too darkly. That is Georgia's 14th congressional district. It's reporting one of the lowest early vote turnouts in the state so far. It's also among the most Republican districts in the entire nation. It's so red, it just elected QAnon supporter and cheerleader Marjorie Taylor Greene to Congress. That's why tonight's Trump rally is going to be in Dalton. That's in that district, the 14th. He's guaranteed to get a big crowd and will no doubt encourage people to show up in person tomorrow and vote. The 14th district is also 85% white, which speaks to the racial disparities in the early vote. Both black and white voters across all of Georgia are voting in larger shares than they did in the runoffs, than they did in the regular election, at least besting their portion of the population, which means early voting among Latinos, Asians, and other groups is lagging. Finally, this factoid, which explains why so few people are not putting a lot of stock in early voting. On Election Day in November, 60% of the in-person voters cast ballots for Donald Trump and David Perdue, 60%. Loeffler also got a big day of boost. It just wasn't as pronounced because there were 19 other people on the race against her. But if same-day voting also goes 60% Republican, the only question left is how many Georgians who didn't vote early come out and vote tomorrow. It's going to be a big in-person day for Republicans in Georgia, just like it was during the general election. And just like on November 3rd, will the absentee votes, will the in-person votes be enough to offset that Democratic advantage? Unless they're all really good actors, a lot of the Democratic folks on the ground, from the Abrams and also Mayor Bottoms from Atlanta, they feel confident that the turnout and the enthusiasm is going to really manifest. We'll find out. But you have this perversity, Andrew, where the president is doing everything in his power to say that anyone who voted in November, it was a delegitimate election, don't trust the process. Republicans are petrified this is going to scare off people from turning out tomorrow. In fact, Republicans, Secretary of State, you had the Lieutenant Governor, they debunked everything that Trump said in that call that I played off the top. Let's take a listen.
The Secretary wants me to make clear that everybody's vote is going to count. Everybody's vote did count. I want to make that abundantly clear. And the reason I'm having to stand here today is because there are people in positions of authority and respect who have said their votes didn't count, and it's not true. And I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to go through all this anti-disinformation Monday. It's whack-a-mole again. It is Groundhog Day again. I'm going to get to talk about things that I've talked about repeatedly for 2 months. But I'm going to do it again one last time, I'm hoping. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure people understand their votes count. Every person, every voice matters.
Andrew, Republicans are petrified. It's almost as if the president's intentionally trying to screw with the chances for Loeffler, and Perdue here for re-election. It's crazy. It is, and as we've heard from our reporting on the ground in Georgia, we don't think this is going to change a lot of people's minds. I mean, Republicans are going to vote Republican. The only question is, will they turn out or will they not turn out? And here's the funny thing is, if the Republican turnout is depressed, and that's why they lose some of these elections, I'm not sure we'll be able to link that directly to Donald Trump. We'll have to make guesses about it. But it's not like you're going to get people who don't show up and are like, I didn't vote because of Donald Trump.
we're not going
And
to
who knows what he says tonight? That's the other variable. I
He's
know
gonna
it's not going to be rah-rah.
He's going to encourage people to get out and vote.
Yeah, but he's going to make it about him and not the 2 Republican senators. All right, we come back. As COVID keeps spreading and killing thousands of Americans every day, the vaccine rollout continues to be a mess. After the break, I'm going to show you how hospitals struggling to keep up with the surge of patients, and that's another thing that's delaying the inoculation of the American public.